If you're struggling with self-discipline, I'm going to tell you exactly why and then the first step to get out of it. Hi, I'm Nick McLaughlin. I'm an executive function coach giving you strategies to be an unstoppable leader with unstoppable focus and follow through using fun analogies like these. This balloon represents your self-discipline. So there was two ways that I would really struggle with my self-discipline. And one was I would either tie myself to the ground so tightly with rules and being constricted and saying, oh, I can only work this way. I can only work in a tiny desk in a cubicle with exactly this time, no music, no nothing, like, you know, or whatever rules you set for yourself that are too constrained. And when that happens, you don't leave any room for yourself to really move. And then if you have ADHD like me, especially, you're not going to be able to work very well. It's going to get exhausting and draining and you're going to feel sapped. So you can't do that to yourself. The other area people go wrong is they will be more like this yellow balloon. So over here, they're way too grounded, too constricted. But over here, you're just floating around, head in the clouds, being distracted all day. Maybe that represents you just being really distracted on your phone while you're working, you're watching a show, maybe you're talking to a friend, you're hanging out, maybe you're in an environment that's not supportive to your focus at all. And then when you want to be grounded, it feels like it's extremely constricted now. It feels like you're almost down here because of the comparison. You're already on a high and you don't want to be stuck. So of course, the best place to be is here, right in the middle. Bam. And that's basically being grounded, setting the parameters of what it looks like to work in a healthy environment, being intentional beforehand, saying, okay, I can have music, but let's try and do that without my phone. Maybe I have an old MP3 player or something, or maybe I could just play music and put my phone in my desk. But you're also free to move around, but you're not going to go outside and float around in the clouds and do whatever and get lost and drift away with your distractions being the wind, for example, just kind of blowing you from one side to the other. Whoa, oh, my prop. Good thing I got a spare. Oh, I crapped myself for a second there. Let's use the carcass of this last balloon. I guess the goal is kind of like if you have a kid, you let the kid do whatever they want, but within the confines of your rules. So with my son, for example, he just learned to crawl and he wants to go everywhere. And I want him to explore and have fun and play around, but I don't want him to get hurt. I don't want him to go to the wrong area, pick up crumbs in the kitchen, or to fall down the stairs. So I have set up a parameter for him to play in. And that's kind of like this, where you have to feel like you're free because you're happy with what you've got. You feel content. You feel like there's enough freedom there to move around, be flexible, do what you want, but not enough to float away and have your head in the clouds and get lost and drift away. Adults need those parameters too. That would have been a funny video, just having that, my little baby playpen around me the whole video. I had a client like that where they had to work on something that was really draining, a big project, but they didn't want to work on it because it was draining. So what he was doing was the equivalent of tying himself to the ground like this, because he said he was drained because he had to lock himself in his office and it was boring and tedious and distracting because people outside of the office would talk a lot. That's the equivalent of doing this. The advice I gave him was to loosen it up a little bit. And I asked him, I said, hey, you said you had a lake near you. Why don't you go to the lake and make that your place to work? Because you don't really need Wi-Fi for the project you're working on. And he said, I never thought of that before. You could just pick a spot right on the beach and work. So if you feel like your energy is being sapped, that's how you can tell you're down here. You're tying the string too tight and too close to the ground. But if you are losing control completely, as we saw earlier, and I'm going to step away from this freaking haunted wall, you are basically being moved around by your distractions. Let's say that you are not even getting to the work, you're distracting yourself, you're on your phone, you're playing games, you're doing whatever else. Even toxic productivity is an example of being up here because you're not handling that thing that needs to be handled. So when that happens, you got to bring yourself down and say, hey, I'm going to ground myself by saying, okay, I'm going to set parameters on what I'm doing and how I'm going to approach this. Because if you just jump into the situation, you're relying completely on feelings to navigate the entire process. So the way you get around that is by being intentional beforehand, setting some boundaries, grounding yourself, but also making sure it's not too constricted. You have to feel free. This is a multi-step process. This was just the first step. If you want to know the rest of the steps, click the link in the description below. Hop on a call with me and let's get support for your executive functioning. Like and subscribe. I'd love to hear in the comments below if you found this video helpful. Later, nervous.